Hey gang, this week's episode is brought to you by Royal Retros, the king of throwbacks. Hey, if you're looking for teams and leagues that don't exist anymore, but you'd like to remember them in high quality jersey or uniform format, hey, some of those teams were legendary, some of them were disasters, but they all live at Royal Retros. Check them out. RoyalRetros.com. Use that promo code SEATS for 10% off all of your purchases. Check them out now. And now, check out this episode.
George Tinsley, Kentucky Wesleyan College. George Tinsley helped lead Kentucky Wesleyan to the NCAA Division II National Championship in 1966, 68, and 69, and became the first player to start and win 3 NCAA National Championships. Between 1966 and 1969, Tinsley started a record 20 NCAA tournament games and was named to the All-Tournament team in 1968 and 69, earning MVP honors in 1969. He was named to the Southern Region All-Tournament team in 1967, 68, and 69, while earning the regional tournament's Most Outstanding Player Award in 1968 and 69. For his career, he finished with 2,014 points, 1,115 rebounds, and was named First-Team All-American in 1969. Tinsley was named to the NCAA Division II Elite Eight's 50th anniversary team and the NCAA Division II's All-Decade team. He was also the first Division II player to be inducted into the state of Kentucky's Hall of Fame. Tinsley was selected by the Oakland Oaks of the ABA and the Chicago Bulls of the NBA in the 1969 draft. George Tinsley, Kentucky Wesleyan College, and inductee into the 2017 class of the Small College Basketball Hall of Fame.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
All right, welcome into the box office, everyone. This is Tim Hanlon. Hello, this is Good Seats Still Available, the curious little podcast that is devoted to what used to be in professional sports. As always, we appreciate you finding us, downloading us, putting us in your earbuds. We know you've got lots of choices out there, and we hope not to blow it with your time this week. And an interesting conversation at you in moments' time with our new pal, George Tinsley Sr., if you will, and a little bit of background. George, as you can tell, was a star basketball player back in the day, in the late 60s, in the NCAA Division II level, playing for the Kentucky Wesleyan Panthers. He was part of a 3-time champion dynasty, I guess you could call it. 1966, 68, and 69. He was the most valuable player in 69's tournament. He was an All-American twice during his career. He's had his number retired by the Panthers. And he has gone on to a very successful career in the catering and mall-based and facilities-based dining realm. For example, if you happen to be traversing the Louisville International Airport, there, also known as Muhammad Ali Airport, and you stop at the Kentucky Fried Chicken venue there at the airport, well, you'll be dining courtesy of the Tinsley family concessions business, one of many dozens of concessions that his family own and run company that he will soon be sort of stepping back from a little bit as he advances in age. You will be enjoying the fruits of his labor and the fine quality food from KFC. And Kentucky Fried Chicken actually makes an appearance in this conversation, as we'll get into. But it is centered around, of course, what is our interest on this little show? Of course, it's teams and leagues and situations. No longer with us. And before George began his entrepreneurial restaurateur career, and after his amazing run at Kentucky Wesleyan, he had a couple of cups of coffee, he says, in the professional realms of basketball. In particular, the ABA with the Washington Caps. Do you remember them? That's Earl Foreman back in the day, before they moved on to Virginia to become the Squires. A golden year with the Kentucky Colonels of the ABA in Louisville, based, of course. And we can't forget George's last season in 71-72 with the long forgotten and always curious Floridians. They were originally known as the Miami Floridians, but then simply as the Floridians, as they played their home games all around the state of Florida. In between a stop in, wait for it, the Continental Basketball Association with a team known as the Decatur Bullets. All of these teams no longer with us, and that's kind of what drew us to this conversation with the great George Tinsley, as you'll hear in a few moments. Of course, though, a book is out on George's life. He spends a lot of his time not only running the family business, but also doing a lot of inspirational speaking at lots of different locations, both inside and outside the concessions industry, available for hire, of course. You just go to Tinsley Speaks, Tinsley speaks.com, and you can get a sense of his professional speaking and coaching and all that kind of stuff. But he has a brand new book out, which is a wonderful read. It's an easy read, and there are a couple of great chapters on his stops in the ABA and the CBA. The book is called Catch as Catch Can, Building a Legacy by Finding Opportunity in Every Obstacle. It is a story, George's is, of many obstacles, with lots of different disadvantages, shall we say, along the way from the very beginning, adopted at a very young age, and a lot of other challenges to overcome that you'll hear in our discussion, our conversation with George, that he learned from and managed with aplomb, as I think you'll agree, to owning and running a family business that has multiplied into some 60 plus restaurants across various airports across the country. But it's also great recollections of lessons learned in the collegiate game of basketball and the professional game, and all the other things that have thrown their challenges his way. And frankly, things that we can all learn from in our own respective challenges in life. It's a wonderful conversation. It'll take a little bit to get into the actual basketball part of the conversation, but I think you'll see it's well worth the journey. And we're delighted to bring this conversation with the great George Tinsley. And let's get into it, shall we? Let's not waste any more time. And I enjoyed this conversation with George. Hopefully you will too. As always, we invite you to sit back, relax, and please enjoy. I love the background of your story, which we'll get to sort of the, all the stuff that you've done since. But of course, it doesn't escape a silly little show like ours when things like the ABA show up, and prominently on the cover of your book, right, is a uniform from those days, and hence the reach out and stuff. But why? I think it would be great for our audience to kind of get a sense of what you're doing today, and then we can sort of maybe backtrack to get to some of the basketball origins of your story, because to me and to us, obviously, that stuff is really fascinating. You're a pretty accomplished guy post basketball. And that's kind of an understatement. You want to give our audience a little bit of sense of the businesses that you have built in your professional career post basketball.
Well, Tim, I'm in what I call the fourth quarter of my life, and in the process of gearing down in my entrepreneurial phase of my life, and looking forward to some relaxation and giving back to the community that I live and function in. So that's kind of where we are today. We're in the franchising business today, and my son is assuming the president of the company position, the Tinsley family concessions business, where he will lead us into the next phase and maintaining where we are today. We're primarily today in the airport business, where we have a number of different restaurants, concessions that may be termed from just a general public, but they're anywhere from small locations where we have like a Comfy Cow ice cream facility to a P.F. Chang's in Tampa which is a major venue, large venue, pre-security. So we have probably about 10 different franchise or license agreements with companies or with franchisors, and we have a number of other concepts where we've developed a concept like a Bourbon Academy and training room in Louisville, Kentucky, right above the Starbucks there in the main, right in the center of Airside A and B. So we have, I think today there's somewhere around 45 locations in Tampa and Miami and Louisville, all combined. But we range from 60 to 45, I think, where we are today. And the reason I say that is because our business is based off of contracts that are renewed every 8, 5, 10-year agreements, and sometimes rolled over for another 5-year extension. So at any one particular time, we grow or we may shrink because of an airport going through a revitalization program. So that's kind of where we are today. We started out on the street with Kentucky Fried Chicken back in 1984, which was our first location. And
why Kentucky Fried Chicken? Because of the Louisville thing. Because obviously, that's having lived in Louisville for a period of time myself. Actually, it's obviously hugely connected with that area, and obviously headquarters has been there and stuff. Is that kind of the dynamic as to why maybe that one was the first kind of franchise relationship that you explored?
Well, let me walk into it. I am from Louisville, Kentucky. I played professional basketball there for the Kentucky Colonels. I also taught and coached at Louisville Male High School there. And so my transition after professional basketball was to become a teacher and a coach, which I did for 3 years. And then after getting married and starting a family, knew that I had to increase my income. And so starting to look around for jobs, an opportunity opened up at KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken Corporation, as a training instructor. A former Kentucky Colonel by the name of Walt Simon, who is from the New York area and played with the Nets. He was actually working for KFC Corp. So I went out to interview with him for a job in his area of development. But during the circle of interviewers that I was going through, the training department extended an offer, and so that's the one that I had background in as far as teaching, coaching, and so forth. I took that job and started off developing training program. As a matter of fact, we were supposed to open in Schaumburg, Illinois, and we're close to where McDonald's University is, and for some reason that changed. We had an opportunity to develop the training center at a local college, Sullivan Business College, there in Louisville, and so I took that offer and started there in the training department, working with the colonel himself, the real colonel. So that was an awesome experience. So I had an opportunity to develop several programs, train program, and also the basic management course for new franchisees coming into the system. So I had to go through about 3 months of actual on-the-job training and learning how a restaurant operates, and both from the financial standpoint and administrative standpoint, as well as the cooking and all the other parts that go into the business. Once I completed that, then I started working with the franchisees and having their colonel come in 2 days during the training period. So that's how I initially started off with KFC. I worked for them for 8 years in various different departments. Was an operator down in Atlanta, operated 7 restaurants down there, and then got promoted to district training manager and had 51 restaurants that I worked with, and then back to corporate in human resources, running human resources for several regions from Kentucky to Hawaii, and then back to corporate after that tenure, and got into franchising from the standpoint of a franchise manager working with the franchisees in South Georgia and North Florida, helping them with their business 360, from training to human resources, operations, development, we had just bought the state of Florida back from the colonel's daughter and grandson. And so we had to indoctrinate a number of the franchisees that were existing in Florida, operating under the colonel's family as a franchisor, and they were franchisees. So we had to bring them into the system and make sure that they understood the new guidelines and so forth. So I did that for about 2.5 years. And then I had an opportunity to open my first restaurant in Arbondale, Florida. So that's the transition.
Well, so we're talking probably late 70s, early 80s is sort of a lot of this stuff going on, and then your sort of transition into and look, it's probably not probably excellent training, right, to having understood and maybe serendipitously, right, from the originator of the concept, the Colonel, right, Colonel Sanders, started relatively late in life, right, for him. The knowing the insides and outsides of how the brand and the concept and that kind of stuff, and frankly, just the idea of how food and locations and all that stuff generally works, had to put you in a good spot to be on the other side, so to speak, because you know all the ins and outs of corporate, right?
Well, you're correct in that I actually got to understand the theoretical part of the business and how it worked. And I got to work with the colonel who actually started the business and developed the recipes and the cooking process from day one, how it was originally cooked for small groups of people, etc., and how that evolved to the hundreds and thousands of people that we had as customers on a weekly, monthly basis. So I've got to understand the evolution of the cooking process, the equipment that was used, the whole gambit. So I was able to translate that to the new people coming in, these millionaires basically coming in that were getting into the franchising business. So I somewhat became what I would call an expert, in my mind anyway.
It sounds like you had some real practical experience to kind of translate these investors into actually understanding what the heck they were investing in, right?
That's exactly right. And that was in 1976 when I got involved with KFC, started with them.
All right. Well, I want to get back. I want to get to obviously the origin story and the basketball and that kind of stuff. But before we kind of get there, and that's clearly impressive. And by the way, as I'm sure that you've dealt with in your career, both careers, right? Or the transition from being I'll ask this question now. The transition process, right, from being a professional sports, athlete, right, in your case, basketball, to whatever lies beyond it, right, is probably the greatest challenge an individual will have in that career path, right, or in that life path, right? Because, at least you had a taste, for a number of years for basketball, but for somebody like who plays, for 10, maybe even 15, 20 years, depending on how long the path is, right? That has to be I think regardless, it has to be a huge challenge and a huge life event to figure out what's next after arguably doing nothing but training and perfecting the notion of being a professional athlete. Maybe a little bit of, am I correct on that? Number one. Number two, how did you grok your evolution, your process beyond, hey, I got to get a job now?
Well, Tim, that's a pretty loaded question there, but I'll answer it by saying this, that the evolution of my career, there were pieces, very strong pieces from my athletic background, going all the way back to high school when I first started playing basketball, ninth grade to high school, where I really started playing organized basketball. I played a lot of street basketball, but playing in a team sport and understanding all that goes into that sport from the standpoint of winning, losing, game plan strategy, how to recover from a loss, how to plan ahead, having success, having failure, putting all that together prepared me. And I won't get into my early childhood, but that prepared me for a lot of the things that I face moving forward. Also, to be able to create relationships, establish relationships, be able to, if a door opened to an opportunity, to be able to look at that opportunity and decide whether that actually fit my profile and personality, and if so, move to the next level. And the big piece here was when getting married and having responsibilities of a family, raising a family, etc., which a lot was involved in that, because you're not only thinking of one person, you're thinking of two, and possibly when children come into play, what happens. So the response to your question is that I didn't plan to go. I planned to play professional basketball, which the average was about 8 years at that time. I planned to play professional basketball as long as I could, but as that came to a halt, where I was released by New York Nets, and had the opportunity to go to another team in Dallas, I decided that, hey, these responsibilities, I can't keep popping around betting on an opportunity that wasn't there. So I had to make a decision for a more stable career, which teaching and coaching was that phase. And it evolved right into the KFC situation. Once getting into KFC and understanding what all that was before me, because as I was teaching in the training department, developing programs, I was getting offers almost every quarter from other areas within the corporation to join those different departments. And there was only, in the corporate environment, which my mentor was Walt Simon, the guy who had played in the ABL. So he let me know right away that, hey, you can't continue to turn down opportunities. Because if you do, you won't get any more. So after 3 years in the training department, I, along with my wife, decided to take advantage of the opportunity. And then it became, once we did that and it was a success and move and everything, then, as other opportunities came along, it was a lot easier to say, yes, hey, I'll take this opportunity, because once again, all of that background that I had from playing sports and going after accepting challenges and taking on new responsibilities, it all paid off for me.
So that makes sense. And it's also an evolved understanding about, hey, I have transferable skills here, right? But I would make the argument, though, and maybe this is true, maybe not, right? But at that age, right, when you're kind of making that decision, you may not necessarily understand that you have those transferable skills. And I guess the other sort of part of that is, what about the ego in this, right? Because you're, in essence, you're a professional basketball player. Now, albeit we'll talk about the ABA in a second. It had its issues of major and minorness, so to speak, right? But the fact is, there's nothing probably more, I don't know, alluring, it seems, at least from the outside, of being a professional basketball player. I mean, you're known, you've got publicity, people have your fans, you're playing on a team. I mean, to go from that to, frankly, trying to tuck your one's worth, if you will, or value or fame, so to speak, into a bigger organization where you kind of have to you're part of a team now and that all that goes away. That's not easy for a lot of professional athletes to make that transition. No?
No, it's not. But I had good development and training in moving through those different phases of my life, Tim. I think that once I started working with KFC, the very first week, given that I played professional basketball there in Louisville, Kentucky, and the headquarters was based there in Louisville, Kentucky, the very first thing they did was took a picture of me and the Colonel, me with a basketball, and the Colonel with a bucket, that bucket, that was it was publicized throughout the city and nationally that Tinsley still making buckets. That was the tagline, with the photo of me and the Colonel in this bucket of chicken, as well as they took another picture of me with the plaque that my college, Kentucky Wesleyan College, has presented to me as the greatest athlete in the school's history. So a combination of all that, got a lot of publicity. And, who better to establish a relationship with than the Colonel within the KFC Corporation? And then having the ability within that training period to interact with all departments and all phases of the business and the franchise community, with them sending people through the training center. So that opened up the door for me as a former professional athlete who's entering into this area. Now, from an ego standpoint, and being quite frank, not having any business background, and my ego was really put into the check moving into that area. This is all brand new, so it was a learning experience. As I went through different phases, my self-esteem grew, my understanding of the business grew. I always had the stories of the Colonel and I working together and working with other folks, which established my reputation, if you will, just like being a all-star in the ABA or the NBA. You're noted within that company. So all I had to do was take advantage of different opportunities that were presented before me, learn that particular skill set, whether it was human resources, operations. You develop these war stories that you can always throw out there. Well, I remember the day me and the Colonel did this. That put me in a whole different level. So Tim, that's what opened up a lot of opportunities.
All right, before we get truly into the nitty gritty of the basketball stuff, and that makes a ton of sense, right? And I'm looking at the picture, and of course, it's a great entree for you, right? But clearly, you've got to then recognize that, hey, my fame and my basketball skills and what I did on the court will only get me so far, because at the end of the day, this is a business that has to be, and arguably, it's a luxury coming into that in that environment. You got a great head start in that regard, right? But I'm guessing you truly had to figure out, hey, I got to prove myself. I can't ride on these coattails of fame for that long and succeed here.
Definitely. As you would know, in sports, you're taught if the practice starts at 4:00, you're there at 3:45 or 3:30, or even earlier, to get prepared and be ready to start at 4:00. So using that same ingrained lessons that I learned in participating and coaching sports, I applied that in the business community, where if we had meetings, I'm there early. Being prepared and understanding that you got to participate, you got to speak up, you got to be prepared to take on portions of the presentations and so forth. So yes, it was somewhat scary, especially meeting and being with the Colonel alone with the class. Was very, very intimidating, but I had to figure out real quick how to get control as the instructor of the overall class, which I realized that the Colonel loved to see a video we had. It was a reel-to-reel at the time of it's called A Portion of the Legend. And so I learned the Colonel's history from the 4 years old to the time he actually started KFC, and also I learned to play that video at the beginning of all our sessions, which put him in a very emotional state, and the class in a very vulnerable, if you will, state that gave me the opportunity to lead that whole start of the program. So it was, it's part of the game planning and execution.
All right, before we get to hoops, I got to ask, what was the Colonel like? I mean, really based in terms of like in group settings. This is a guy who really got to this level of fame, still ongoing fame in his many years after his passing, relatively late in life and stuff. What was your impression of him, both professionally and maybe personally, to the extent that you could tell?
Well, I mean, I was very impressed with him, given all that he had gone through from 4 years old to where he was, and never giving up and continuing to try his hand at just about every job opportunity that he could come up with. And when he finally had the service station in his entrepreneurial skill of trying to grow that business and making more money, both at top line and bottom line, he took advantage of every opportunity that he could come up with. And that's where cooking in the back of the restaurant, back of that service station, cooking meals for people that were traveling north and south on US 1, also coming up with air holes to be able to fill people's tires, washing their windows when they stopped for gas, and all of that was all part of his pitch to grow the business. And then putting on that white suit and bow tie after preparing the full meal, not only chicken, but the full meal, and walking out talking to the guests, which we call in the business colonelling, how he developed this relationship with these customers that would later on, when the Highway 1 closed and traffic moved to 75 going north and south, he was able to reach out to those patrons that had come through there to be able to. The chicken was the big seller, so he was able to start the franchising concept of having these people who had businesses, who had restaurants, to start selling the product. So when I met him at the and started acting with him in the training department, those things I knew, but through my research, and was able to establish a conversation with it. Now, of course, the Colonel was from a whole different era, from a whole different part.
Yeah,
of Kentucky.
I bet.
Yeah.
And charged at that too, right?
Yeah. So that was, there was some give and take there on my side. I had to realize who the Colonel was, and he was at that time, I think, like 75 years old, and he was like 5'7", and I'm 6'5" with this afro, and so forth. So there was a lot of understanding of terminology and things that took place that didn't always make me happy, but I realized that I had a job to do in the business, and we weren't going to dinner together, and we weren't hanging out together. We just had a job to do, and for that hour or those 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever it evolved into, and then we went our separate ways. So from that vantage point, we got along fine, and I respected him. I respected the opportunity to work in KFC Corporation, because my motivation was, especially after working with these franchisees for 3 years who were millionaires, at that point in my mind, if I can teach them and work with them, then I can do this myself at some point in my career. So that was kind of my mindset after those first 3 years, that I wanted to become a franchisee and become a millionaire, if you will, in that business. So the relationship was pretty fine, without getting real technical into any one particular area.
No, I get that. And I will ask this before, and I promise we're going to get to hoops next. I'm curious as to how I'm trying to be as delicate as possible here, right? So, how accommodating, right? I mean, how unique as an African American basketball player and coming into the process. I mean, having lived in Louisville, right? It has, it's not always it's not the most fully integrated city, and it's got Southern history and all that stuff. And I'm just wondering, did it even have to, in some respects, did you have to even work harder to sort of quote unquote prove yourself, so to speak, or was it a more welcoming and more progressive kind of environment where you could feel more accommodated and given opportunities without sort of, so the potential overhang of disadvantages, et cetera?
Well, Tim, I come, like I said, I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. I grew up there. So the challenges of race and of dealing with situations started out very early. I come from the time when, it was racially desegregated schools. My first 4 years of school was in all black school, and then integration started when I was in the fourth grade. And we took a test. I was put back a year because our curriculum wasn't where the white schools were and so forth. So my point being is that I grew up in that era. I knew how to handle myself. I knew what it took to be successful, to be able to achieve. So when I stepped into the KFC environment, I was ready. I was able to ascertain what the climate was like. I'm talking about corporate settings, corporate world. Fortunately, Walt helped prepare me in our conversation. So just dealing with the Colonel and then the situation, it was just another step. There were a couple of bumps in the road that I had to really reach down deep to be able to handle the situation, but I had the bigger picture in mind, so it didn't slow me down. So it was growing up in Louisville, growing up in Kentucky, playing high school, college basketball. I played high school basketball, Tim, going in Louisville, as I said, with Louisville Middle High School. We went to Carbon, Kentucky, where the Colonel started, to play against the Carbon basketball team. We were not allowed to get off the bus to eat in any of the restaurants. The coaches had to go in and get the food and bring it back on the bus to travel on back to Louisville. So, as I said, I grew up in that kind of situation that, things got better, and Louisville has had its ups and downs, but that's home. And like anywhere else in the country, you learn how to handle it, and you work towards improving what you're able to improve and change some of the mindsets, and we move on. I mean, it's no different than what we're dealing with today, right?
No, I agree, and arguably a very diplomatic answer. So I'm not trying to sort of get too raw here, but I think this for our listeners, right? This especially certain generations, right? People still find this incredulous, right? That incidents like that, still happen or were happening at that time. God forbid they still happen, right? But it's a testament, right? And I think what I hear, and certainly saw in the book too, right, is the notion that as you grow, you're getting wisdom here and knowledge about sort of what you're skilled at. You learning from not only your own mistakes, but what's some societal mistakes, right, and how to sort of deal and move forward despite those, and or try to address those. And that's a testament to your capabilities, your skills, and the wisdom to be able to transfer those skills from basketball, which we're finally going to get to now, luckily.
Well, let me mention one thing that happened in my early years that really kind of helped me through the rest of my life. In the sixth grade, at Nicholas Finzer Elementary School there in Louisville, Kentucky, which was located in Shelby and Broadway. My school sixth grade teacher, her name was Miss Warren. She called me up to the desk, and she made a statement in front of the whole class. George, you need to quit school and go get a job. You're not going to make it. You're just not going to make it. That was probably the biggest blow that I had during my early years. Even worse than being put back from when I moved into Nicholas Finzer. I moved in from the fourth to the fifth grade, but was put back to the fourth grade. This incident was even bigger. Now, take that to seventh grade. I had my homeroom teacher was a lady by the name of Miss Gay Howell, who was in her first or second year of teaching. This teacher reached out to me, realizing my situation, poor, wearing the same clothes to school, not going to lunch and so forth, which Miss Warren did not, because she was an older teacher, older white teacher who was not real happy about all of these new students black students in particular, coming into the school. Miss Gay Howell, took me under her wings, would bring bananas, fruit, sandwiches to her daily work and give to me. She realized my situation, offered me a job as a projector boy, which was fixing these reel-to-reel film and
I remember those.
Yeah, and doing the going around to all the classrooms for movies that you had, which gave me a lot of self-esteem, gave me pride. And if you do this, you do that, you can keep this job. She became the biggest boost in my life, and in the seventh grade and throughout junior high school, that helped my self-esteem and helped me grow, which was, the counter. So going through those two years, the sixth and the seventh grade in particular, it prepared me for the rest of my journey through school. So I highlight that because that was one of the most significant things that happened to me. And that was during the Emmett Till situation.
Oh, sure.
What
sure.
happened with Emmett Till. And I was in the fourth grade then. So there was a lot of little turmoil that, not having newspapers, not having TV, not having that you heard these things, and it put fear and concern in every youngster's in every family, especially with the males in the family, that something bad could happen to you.
Yeah, and it had to be a pressure cooker for sure, both on many different fronts, right? So I can't even. It's hard for me to fully relate, but I can certainly relate to what must have been. But is this when basketball enters your life as well?
Yes, basketball, because I was going to the gym in the seventh grade. I was tall for my age. Had jumping skills, speed. I was pretty fast and quick. And so the gym teacher there, a guy by the name of Coach Chepo, started up a basketball team, and so that's when I started playing. Not specifically the fundamentals. We just played because there's no practice time and all of that. So we just played, and so that's where it started. And then a recruiter from the high school started visiting, and which was legal then, and got me in touch with the high school, and so I was recruited into the high school. And when I went to Male High School, which was one of the top high schools in the state of Kentucky and definitely in Louisville, I started as a sophomore at center at 6'5" and only about 175 pounds. But that was the beginning of my career. And of course, at that time, I lived in an area called Smoketown. in Louisville, Kentucky, and we had a park there, Ballard Park, where I was able to hone my skills playing the street game against some of the high school and the tougher players in the entire city that would come to that park and play. And I got better and better and became one of the stars of that particular park, which transferred my skills set into Male High School, where I became a all-stater by my senior year, and was able to get a scholarship to Kentucky Wesleyan College, where in the 4 years there, I don't think any basketball player going through 4 years of college had a greater career than I had, from the standpoint of winning 3 national championships and coming in third in in my sophomore year, which we really had our best team. But for those 4 years and the accomplishments we had, I think we have that 4 year period of our team was probably one of the greatest teams in the history of Kentucky at all levels. And we're on the list to be for the Hall of Fame right today. We've been on there for about 3 years, and I don't know if we'll ever get it, but just to be put on the list, that 4 year period is a great accomplishment.
You guys dominated the Division II those years, 66, 68, 69, winning those championships. And you're number 50, retired by the Panthers team. How did you choose Kentucky Wesleyan, or was it chosen? Did they choose you, so to speak? Like, what was your college basketball next step process like?
Well, keep in mind, during that era, Division I, especially University of Kentucky and Louisville, University of Kentucky was not recruiting any black athletes at all. They made
it was still a segregated environment in that respect.
Yes, they did offer Wes Unseld a scholarship offer. He declined. They offered Butch Beard, who was in the same class with me, and Butch, I think he did sign, but then he withdrew after some other pressures and things that happened. So they had no black athletes in football or basketball. They did have a track guy, that guy named Jim Green, that actually went there to run track. The University of Louisville was only recruiting the top 2 black athletes that they were bringing in during that time. That prior they had Wade Houston, Eddie Whitehead, and those guys that came back in '63. Of course, Wes went there in '64 and Butch in '65. So they were only recruiting the cream of the top. My connection with Kentucky Wesleyan was the head coach at Wesleyan was the head coach at Male High School when I was in junior high school. So he had recruited me to come to Male, but he left prior to me getting there. So he was down at Wesleyan. Dallas Thornton, who was a teammate who was 1 year ahead of me, he went to Wesleyan. So it made it easy for me, since I knew the head coach and my teammate from high school was there. So, and it was an hour and a half drive to Wesleyan. I had no car, but that distance was very close, and I was able to take several other guys, and one of my teammates in high school and one of my best friends from the 4th grade with me to Wesleyan, and so it was a pretty easy choice. I had probably more track scholarships offered than I did basketball. Basketball, I had about 5 different schools, Davidson being the biggest school, Austin Peay, and Eastern Kentucky were the biggest opportunities that I had. But Wesleyan was where throughout my senior year, I pretty much had made up my mind that's where I wanted to go. Really and truthfully, not really envisioned going to college my sophomore and my junior year, but after seeing Dallas go, then it became that I knew I had an opportunity to go since he was able to go.
Yeah, it helps. It helps having a bit of a pathway there and a connection to that thing. Well, look, I mean, I mean, how those pieces fell together, right? I mean, to be so dominant in that division and winning those. I mean, it's essentially it was a dynasty. The years that you were there, whether how much or how little you were part of it. I mean, you were certainly you were in a couple of all tournament teams and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's clear that you chose wisely, maybe unwittingly, but let me get into then at what point during your college career do you realize that you recognize or even envision that you could even go to the next level in the professional realm? Because remind our audience too, this is the late 60s when there was a challenger league in professional basketball. The NBA was, having its issues and these entrepreneurs, right? A few of whom we've had on this show to talk about the old days, including Pat Boone, by the way, with the Oakland Oaks and all that kind of stuff, which makes an appearance in this conversation, I'm sure, in a second. In some respects, I got to think that. So, number one, I'd love to know what your ideation process is about. Can I make it to the next level, and how like real that could be? But then perhaps number two, the embarrassment of riches of having two professional leagues, being able to draft and stuff, that had to be a pretty good signal for a lot of players, even those on the fence, that there's more opportunities now than there were just a few years prior, because now there are two leagues looking for talent.
Well, let me just start from the beginning to your question. In my freshman year, I started on the varsity team that won the national championship. As a matter of fact, the championship game, I played the entire game, never came out for substitution. So I realized throughout the year that my talent, my skill set was really good, and I was the best defensive player on the team, and that really was what got me in the starting lineup. And I was the second leading rebounder on the team that year. Now I had two guys that were ahead of me, as a matter of fact, three that were ahead of me who were All-Americans. Sam Smith, who played in the ABA, was drafting it in the NBA also. And he was 2 years ahead of me. Dallas Thornton was 1 year ahead of me, and he was drafted both the NBA and ABA. And we had another guy named Roger Cardell who was an All-American at the 6 foot and under level on that team. So we had a power-packed team that I started on. So I saw what those guys were doing and what my capabilities were. I only averaged 9 points a game, didn't make the double digit, but all our offense was run for Sam, who was the All-American, Dallas, and the other seniors that were on the team. I got my points off of rebounds and putting them back in, and fast breaks and steals and things of that nature, the garbage, if you will. But I knew that I had a skill set, and then winning the national championship, that said a whole lot with the pro scouts being there. So I realized that opportunity was there, but I didn't get a chance to actually become have that mindset of being able to make all tournament and those kinds of things, because these guys were ahead of me. Then we traveled to Africa that summer and played teaching basketball throughout Africa. And so once again, elevating my whole perspective of my skill set. So I was ready, and knew that I had an opportunity as I came out of my freshman year going in. And each year, I had a major jump from freshman to junior year. I was averaging 15.5 points a game. And then in my, that was my sophomore year. My junior year, I was averaging 21 points a game and was the leading scorer. And I still had Dallas was 1 year ahead of me, who was the All-American. I made third team, but as we and Sam had graduated and he went to the pros. So I knew the door was there and open, and scouts were starting to hang around at our different games, and the ABA was going on. my high school coach, who was Gene Rhodes, who coached me as a sophomore and as a junior, he was actually the coach of the Kentucky Colonels. So once again, there I knew that I had a connection to at least the ABA. So from a perspective of knowing that opportunity was out there, was established very early. Understanding too that the NBA was the big time and the ABA was, second rated. Everybody wanted to go to the NBA, the more established league, but the ABA was where they were throwing money out, was another opportunity. But you understood that these teams were here today and gone tomorrow. So that was kind of the perspective as I matriculated through college, and got a chance in my junior year to play on the small college team that was auditioning, if you will, for the Olympic team. Made it all the way to the finals, where I busted my ankle up. I was averaging like 28 points a game, and felt like I had an opportunity, but no small college player had ever made the Olympic team. Spencer Haywood, who was a junior college player, he made the team, and some of the armed forces guys made it, but no small college player to that point had ever made the Olympic team. And we had Earl Monroe, we had Walt Frazier, we've had a number of different guys, Luke Jackson, who came from small college that never made the Olympic team. And that's kind of the Hank Abba and some of that established group that picked players just had that philosophy.
All right, what's this? Royal Retros. All right, longtime fans of this show may remember a little site that we used to promote the heck out of called 503 Sports. Well, not only are they still around, they are now known as Royal Retros. RoyalRetros.com, the king of throwbacks. And like the name implies, the highest quality jerseys and hats and apparel and all kinds of stuff related to various teams and leagues and situations that we love to obsess about here on this show. And I'm talking about getting jerseys with your name and number on the back of them, customized to your liking for the WHA or old NHL hockey teams that may not exist anymore. Perhaps it's a Federal League team from way back or a Negro League team. Maybe you're just enamored with the various football leagues of the past, like the Arena League or the All-American Football Conference or the original UFL, United Football League. Yes, you can get all of those teams in all kinds of colors, away jerseys, home jerseys. You want to put your name on them. You want to make sure you got the official patch on the side. All of those things and more at RoyalRetros.com. And I'm not kidding, friends. You go there, you want to find that Cleveland Barons jersey to wear and show. Hey, you're maybe a Colorado Avalanche fan and you want to represent the Quebec Nordiques from where they came in the arena to show your heritage and your love and knowledge of the history of that franchise. You can do that and more. And I'm talking across football and basketball and baseball and hockey and you name it. All kinds of great stuff for you to find and buy and purchase and wear proudly from Royal Retros. That's RoyalRetros.com. And of course, we have a promo code for you. We want to save you money from all these great things. And here's that code. It's SEATS, SEATS, promo code SEATS for all of your purchases at RoyalRetros.com. Check them out. You'll be glad you did. We love them. And our friend Destin Alameda there out in Portland, Oregon, we appreciate his and their sponsorship of this show. And now, back to our conversation. Okay, so 69, you're drafted by both the Bulls of the NBA and at the time, the Oakland Oaks of the ABA. Given that background that you just described, you chose the ABA. Why?
Because of money.
So you had thought through all that process that, hey, maybe it's here today, gone tomorrow, but you still said the money's the greater driver here.
Exactly. And it was getting better each year. They were becoming more established. And the team that drafted me, the Oakland Oaks, they had Rick Barry, They had Larry Brown, they had Warren Jabali, they had Ira Harge, Jim Eakins. They had established players that I felt joining with that group, it was going to be more stability, on the Oakland Oaks than it would going to the Chicago Bulls, where you had to go to 2 to 3 different camps to try out before they would even start talking to you about money, as far as what your contract might be. And the agents at that time, I had an agent, and he was doing all the communicating, so I didn't talk to them personally, and so I wasn't really comfortable with that opportunity versus the ABA, where I got a 10,000 signing bonus on a $25,000 contract right up front. So I grabbed the money and ran. Unfortunately, after I signed and was supposed to report to Oakland, that's when the team shut down.
Well, look,
And moved.
they had just won the ABA championship. This was the culmination, I guess, of Pat's 2-year ownership thing. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, or our audience, by all means listen to it, because he lost a ton of money on that stuff, even though it went from rags to riches between those 2 seasons, right? But do describe that, because I got to think that made him a heady thing. Hey, I got some money. These guys just won the championship. This Pat Boone guy is like a legit guy and owns this team. And then how and when do you find this out that it's not around?
Well, I really didn't get into the Pat Boone ownership part of it. I was more looking at it from the players and the coach, if you will, which was Bruce Hale. And I think Al Bianchi was a part of that structure also. So that was more of what I looked at, plus and more importantly, the money. And I got to be honest, that was it. Being a poor kid just coming out of college and so forth, then that opportunity presented itself. And my thing was, if it failed, I've got a college degree, I have something to fall back on. Plus, I could still go to the NBA and try out with the Chicago Bulls, because I knew Clem Haskins real well, and I liked the Bulls, the players on the Bulls. I really liked them as well, but I did not have a financial offer, so I didn't know what was on the table. Chicago, the weather there,
Oh,
and
be nice. Come on.
yeah, all of the stuff that goes on in Chicago. Oakland was a pretty easy choice. But
All right. So
you know,
you made that choice though, but so tell me how this happens, how you find out, and then what happens then, because the ownership change, what happens there, and your ultimate entree into the league.
well, I got a letter that of what had transpired, that the team had folded, and my communications with my agent was that we were all being relocated to Washington with the Washington Capitals, which was just starting up. And it seemed to be the contracts were established, and so they bought all the contracts. So that's where I decided to go. I knew nothing about DC. I hadn't been there from the standpoint of looking for a home or a place to stay and all that. So I packed up and got up there a couple of weeks early and found, got the layout of the land. Started some of the guys that were from the local area on the team, like Fatty Taylor, and I hooked up with those guys and started playing with them. Was working out and stayed in the YMCA, and when camp opened, Rick Barry had made the decision at the time that he wasn't coming. He wanted to stay on the West Coast. And so I think there were maybe one other guy that kind of held out. But that opened up some opportunities. I roomed with Larry Brown and established a great relationship with him that I still have to today. So I was off to the running and until after Game 5. And after Game 5, I came in from the game and noticed that my name had been pulled off the locker. was in tape and had been pulled off the locker, and the trainer came up to me and handed me a ticket and told me that my contract had been sold to the Kentucky Colonels, and I was to report in New York to play against the Nets with the team the very next day. So I had to leave everything that I had there, packed it all up in my car, and flew to New York and met up with the team. The coach, as I said, was my high school coach, so that was fairly easy to get into understanding what he was doing there. Sam Smith, who was my teammate at Wesleyan, who had been in the league for several years, he and I roomed together on the road, and so I knew him extremely well. We had a great relationship, and we were going back to, we're based out of Louisville, Kentucky, which is home. So I'm able to go back home and get myself established and play before people that I knew, fans that I knew. So and we're only playing less than a mile from where I grew up.
So you played 5 games for the Caps. This is the Earl Foreman now owned Washington Caps, playing at the what the hell was the name of that the Washington Coliseum, I guess, which I think is, I don't know if it's still around or was rehabbed or something like that. So are you ecstatic at this, that you're now going, quote unquote, back home, so to speak, to play for the Colonels? And what was going on that happened? Was this a surprise and just dumb luck, or were there machinations behind the scenes, either from you or others, to maybe make this happen so that you could go back to Kentucky?
No, I had no idea. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the recruiters from Kentucky, scouts that is, had been to Wesleyan games to see me play. And Gene Rhodes, the coach, he had actually been to a couple of games, never spoke to me, but he had been there. So I knew that there was some possible interest and that they might draft me, but they didn't. And so as far as dumb luck, I had mixed emotions about it, because Gene Rhodes knew me as a defensive player, a rebounder, and I felt very strongly that that's why he was bringing me in to play defense on some small forwards like a Roger Brown and the Walt Simons, the 6'5" guard, the 6'5" forwards that were high scorers and dominant players on the ABA team. So I figured that that's why I was being brought in. But in my mind, I'm a scorer. I developed into a pretty good scorer, and with decent 3-point range and so forth. But so I had mixed emotions about joining him. We had a kind of off and on relationship in high school, because he was a very aggressive, in your face, say just about anything coach. And so at times you have a good relationship with him, but at times I thought he was crazy. And as a matter of fact, we lost the game in high school, and he took the whistle and hit the official with it and got suspended. And that's where the red light came from, that's on top of the backboard for the last second shots. We lost to Seneca, which was West Unseld, by 1 point in the finals of my junior year. We had number one ranked team in the state of Kentucky at that time. I kind of bounced back there, but I had mixed emotions about it. But I was happy to be back home. My wife to be was there, and so that was a welcome change. And so but I was a little uncomfortable how this was going to all play out. Sam Smith, who was my roommate who was my teammate in college, but also my roommate on the road with the Colonels, he and I were going to be vying for that small forward position starting. Sam was 6'7", 260 pounds, and I'm 6'5" and weighed about 205. So there was different teams. We meant that we'd be different ones of us. We would be sharing that role, and so that wasn't a very comfortable mental thing for me at that age. So yeah, it was uncomfortable, but it happened.
Right, and you guys had a great year in the making it all the way to I think the finals right that year. But
We didn't go to we went, yes, we went to the finals in our division against when we played against Indiana, the Pacers, who was our competition in our particular division, and I think I averaged about right around 8 points a game, were the games that I actually had a chance to play in, and with any time. The offense was totally designed for our guards, Louis Dampier and Daryl Carrier, who were 3-point specialists and could really fill it up. And our center, Gene Moore, I think he was like the third leading scorer on the team. So I was primarily focused on defense, but where I had an opportunity on breaks and broken plays, I could fill it up then and could take the shots. But there were games. It was a funny year for me as a rookie because there were games where I may have only played 5 minutes, and there was another game where I might play 20 minutes. So,
but you were playing. You were definitely getting minutes each game, though, regardless of how much or how little, though, right?
Yes,
Usually.
yes, that year, yes.
So how does the year end? Because obviously, either you did not win that battle with Smith, or because and then so you dipped into the realm of the CBL or the CBA at that time, right? So walk me through, and we're getting sort of the cul-de-sac of all this. So hang in there with me. So tell me how you handled the end of that season and going down, I guess, so to speak, to the CBA, and then coming back up to the ABA the following season. I mean, give us a little bit of a sense of sort of the dynamic of the team and the dynamic of you at that time, because I'm sure people sort of don't really understand sort of the ABA and even CBA relationship at the time, even if there was one.
Well, that year was as I look back on it, was a pretty good year because I was a contributor to the team, and I was a local favorite because I was the only player on the team that was from Louisville that had a strong connection with the community, and
Would seem
so
like it would seem to be like an asset for the team, no?
it was, but I didn't realize at the time the financial difficulties that the ownership was having in maintaining the team, and where what their objectives were. But from a player standpoint, I felt good. I had a good relationship with the overall team and so forth. So I ended the year on a high. I really had a good summer, getting prepared for the next year. Went into the camp. That year is the year that they brought in Dan Issel, Mike Pratt. I think Artis Gilmore came in either that year or the year following. It may have been that year, but they had a whole new group of guys that were drafted, and the whole business plan for the Kentucky Colonels was obviously butts in seats. And so they wanted to bring in players that had star power nationally. So they brought, as I said, they brought in the UK guys and a number of other guys. And so in preseason, I was averaging in the 20s, and playing extremely well. So a guy named Claude Verdon from Murray came in. Claude was a great player. He and I were exactly almost the same size, 6'5", and both could score. And I think I was a better defensive player. But point being is that they chose to make a change, and Gene Rhodes, my high school coach, called me in, and they brought in Warren Jabali. I'm sorry, brought in Warren from not exactly sure where he came in from, whether it was Washington or whether it was Indiana, but he came on, and Warren and I were extremely close. But the organization was a little nervous about dealing with him, but he was an all-star guard forward. And so I think they were, as I said, they were a little worried about him coming on the team because he could be very militant and very expressive, and most people walked a little gingerly in dealing with him. So both players and coaches. So it was a challenging time for the coaching and so forth. But long story short, yeah, I wound up getting cut from the team that year, and were told to just hang out, and they may call me back up. And so that's where I started looking at different teams to play with that were paying. So that's when I got into the CBA and was traveling back and forth and playing with them, but still at different times practicing with the Colonels, and the coach would let me know that there may be an opportunity and so forth. So I was kind of hanging on, and I went to work there in the city when working with the school system there as a liaison.
So you were part-time in your way to kind of still hanging into the system. Okay. So a couple last things, and then I'll let you promote, and because we've kept you way longer than, but this is great. I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am, frankly. It's also, it clearly, we look back at the history of the Colonels franchise, right? So the fact that you were able to sort of hang on, if you will, or still be related to the organization. I mean, just there's crazy changes throughout the entirety. I mean, the ABA itself was comical in terms of its changes and lefts and rights and all kinds of turnarounds and stuff. But in terms of like team colors, they keep changing. Head coaches, how many were there at the Louisville Colonels? Excuse me, the Kentucky Colonels over the course of its career. The ownerships were multiple, right? John Y. Brown and his wife until not until 1973, but it just seemed to be like it was a game of musical chairs, and you were probably right in the middle of that in 69, 70.
Yes, I was, it was really musical chairs before I got there. When I got there, it was starting to be a little more stable, as far as I think Rhodes was there for probably 4 seasons. And then when they had the new general manager come in, he kind of cleared house, moved Rhodes up to a administrative position. And then they had another coach come in before Hubie Brown came in right after that, and when Artis was there, and they became a little bit more stable. Ownership changed as mentioned. John Y. Brown was not a guy that was going to sit around and lose money, and was always looking for the next big deal himself. And so Ellie kind of his wife took over for a period of time there. But the Colonels they were one of the more stable teams in the league.
Yeah, which is a relative statement, right?
Exactly. Yes. The other part of it was the other teams were so. I mean, we would actually play like New York. We played in the Nets, and you had to stand in line to take a shower. It was all kinds of situations. Sometimes we didn't know specifically what facility we would be playing in, or there may have been a ice rink that like in Pittsburgh, we play up there, and they just have had put a floor over top of the ice rink, and we would play slipping and sliding and all kinds of things. So showers, the hot water would run out in some of these teams, and so the Colonels and the Pacers and Denver, those teams were pretty solid, and the stability was there with the whole organization, so things were pretty good. I think as the latter years with the Colonels, right before they folded, is when they started moving players around a lot more frequently, and of course the ownership making decisions, and then of course the league folded and went into the NBA. But the battle between the NBA and the ABA, that was ongoing, where David Stern and the NBA and the contracts that they were negotiating, and of course when Julius Erving came into the league, that really shook it up, because he was the draw in the ABA, and it was taking away some of the attention from the NBA. And so that's when they tried, like the Deacons, to get Julius over to the NBA, but couldn't successfully pull that off. And eventually, of course, with Rick Barry and the names that we had in the ABA, they finally folded and brought the teams into the NBA.
All right. Last sort of a chapter here of the ABA thing. So when you're playing for Decatur, the Decatur Bullets in the CBA, right? That even had to be a wider-eyed scenario there, where it's like, wait a minute, okay, I know what I left from the ABA, but oh my God, now this is, the ABA probably seemed like nirvana by comparison to that. I'm assuming, right? It could have been. You tell me, but I'm also curious too how you get back to the ABA with the Floridians, one of the more enigmatic teams of this league. And I'm wondering, in your CBA time and you're hanging around in the Kentucky thing, you're thinking maybe you can get back to Kentucky on that roster. Was there any opportunity maybe to also try to get a look at the NBA now that you were in the CBA? I guess the question there is, how do you get to the Floridians? Is the NBA another possibility? Were you disappointed that you didn't get back to Kentucky?
One of the things that we should keep in mind is that in those days, it was literally a war between the NBA and the ABA. And so if you played in the ABA, there was very little chance you were going to get an opportunity to play in the NBA. Once you played with the ABA, then the doors are pretty well closed as far as going to the NBA. I found that out while playing, in the ABA and talking to some of the NBA guys. Butch Beard and I in particular were great friends through high school. And of course, he went into the NBA and I went into the ABA the same year. So, we had conversations and visits all the time. I always felt that I had an opportunity to play with my skill set. I knew I was just a victim of what the circumstances were, and you make do with what's going on. So when the next year rolled around, I had Warren Jabali, who was the friend that we had gotten to be friends playing with Washington, and Matt Calvin, who also was a great friend, had talked to Bob Bass, who was the coach down there, about me coming down and trying out. So the next year, and so after going down and going through the camp, they signed me to play there. And so once again, it was one of those roller coaster rides in Miami. You played sometimes you didn't, and depending upon what the scheme was. But I enjoyed playing with those guys, the camaraderie with the players and so forth. It was not the same as the Kentucky scenario, but I really enjoyed playing with those guys and became friends with them, lifelong friends with them. Matt Calvin and I talk just about twice every month. We've been friends for 50 plus years, and Warren Jabali, right up until his passing, were great friends. So our Harge and so forth. So I've always maintained relationship with those guys. The ABA was, even though as crazy as it was, and as dysfunctional as it was, I think it really created a relationship between all of us that's ever played in the NBA or ABA. I'm sorry, whether you played 1 year or whether you played the full 10 years. We became great friends. And when we had our first 30-year reunion or 25-year reunion, 25, 30, I can't remember for sure, but we came together then, plus that top 30 guys, as well as the other guys that came to participate in there. And Julius Erving during that time asked me to be the secretary of the ABA, which I took the responsibility on, and held the communications between all of the guys that ever played in the ABA, which I kept a file and still have a file of those guys. I'm not sure if the contact information is correct, but I took that information, and that opened the door for me to get involved with the NBA later on the board of the NBA Retired Players Association, which I served on the board for 7 years and was chairman of the board and past chairman of the board, as well as the treasurer of the board at different stints through that period. So I maintained a great relationship with all of the NBA guys, retired guys, that is, and the founders of the NBA Retired Players Association. So that's always kept me right in the loop, in the middle with the guys, both ABA and the NBA through today.
Yeah, and look, and we also know the plight of the ABA players, and they're trying to get the NBA to kind of pony up and fully fund that kind of stuff. I suspect that you were at least tangentially related to that, or understanding of that cause as well, right? The old ABA players getting their due, frankly, for what transpired before the NBA merger.
Yes, I was very involved in that. Excuse me, not as a key name like the Rick Barrys and who else were in Julius and Spencer Haywood and Matt Calvin and the guys out of Indiana that were a part of it, and Scott Tarr, who was an attorney up in Indianapolis area. So yes, I was involved there. I think what really took, when David Stern was no longer involved and unfortunately passed away, that opened the door for a new relationship with the NBA, and Adam Silver, who we've met with a number of different times, was open to honoring the guys who had played at least 3 years in the ABA and who went into the NBA and played less than 2 years. They would qualify for the pension program. So yes, I was involved with that, and probably what really Bob Costas was a big part of that focal point of helping this come about. Also, probably what really took emotionally took got everything passed was my teammate in college, Sam Smith. On his dying bed, he asked Scott Tarter to what he could do to help. Which they took a picture of Sam in the hospital bed with an ABA basketball, and that became a big publicity picture that went across the nation. That here's another player that's leaving that will not be able to have any kind of compensation for playing in the league. And Sam played in the league for 5 years, I think, and I think he may have played 1 year. I'm not sure about the NBA, but that picture and the article around it with Scott and Bob Costas and Dan Issel was a part of that overall group as well. I think that really got the whole program passed.
All right, last question. And again, I appreciate your staying with us, and then we'll let you promote. We're going to promote, of course, elsewhere. Don't worry about that. The ABA, you must have had some fun along the way. I got to think even the Floridians with their still famous cheerleaders still resonate today, so to speak. But the question in there is, do you think the NBA has fully and honestly kept the ABA sort of legacy either alive or in its proper place? Because I would argue that the ABA is arguably not as remembered perhaps as vividly as it could still be given the NBA's dominance today. So reminiscence of ABA, some fun, and B, ABA legacy. Is it properly and could it be improved in terms of memories?
Well, from a fun standpoint, in looking back at our time spent together, it was a lot of fun, a lot of heartache, a lot of disappointments, and I think all of that put together made for great theater of putting smiles on your face, understanding that the hardships that you went through, the ups and downs, the relationships that you had with your coaches in those days. Players were close to the coaches. They hung out together in some instances, or quite a few instances, and so the relationships where everybody was going through it, and so it wasn't that great separation of today where let's just use Michael Jordan as a focal point, where Michael operates or Kobe and LeBron kind of operate in a certain space that differentiates you from that player number 10 or number 12 on the team and so forth. They just don't have that ongoing connection, where in the ABA, I don't care where you are, everybody was really close. The only guy that really kind of stood out and separated was Rick Barry. Rick was, during those particular days, he was kind of in a world of his own, doing his own thing. And of all the teams that I can remember playing, Rick was the only guy that was kind of was out there. Today, Rick is very approachable and great relationship with him, and I've really enjoyed post basketball with him. During the time when he was playing, he was a distance guy, and he was just a little bit different. So net lot of great stories of travel, hotel accommodations, game situations. You never knew what you were going to be facing the next day.
So mostly fond, not necessarily bad memories. Yeah.
In my case, mostly fun, because I landed on my feet. It was not the end of the world. It was not the only part of my world. So it was, I look back on it as mostly fun and proud I had an opportunity to play. I wish I could have played longer. I wish I'd been in, today we got 30 teams in the NBA. And at that time we had 10 teams in the ABA, 10 teams, I think, in the NBA, total of 20 teams. So more teams, more opportunities for talented players to play. There was no race and no what college you played at had anything to do with whether you made the team. In those days, it'd be fair to say there was a quota on especially in the NBA, of how many blacks might be on a team and how many whites were on the team. In the ABA, there wasn't that quota, but there were players in the ABA that we had guys that came right out of prison that were playing. We had guys that came right off the street that never played college that were playing. Some guys that got paid by the game. to play. There had guys that were headhunters that their job was to rough up players on the other team. So there was all of those kind of guys, teammates that mixed in with the Charlie Scotts and the Julius Irvings and so forth. So it was the personalities, and it was a little bit different than today's players.
That's just wild. I mean, that's just wild. I mean, and all kinds of personalities. And I know some of that's come out in Free Spirits, the 30 for 30, all kinds of stuff. I'm Marvin Barnes, I ain't going on no time machine.
Yeah.
I mean, just the characters of all that stuff. And I hate to see any of that flicker away. And I don't think you'd want to see that either, because that was not only a colorful time, but it was also just, it saved the NBA. That's, I guess, my point really there is that, the NBA before and after the ABA, right? There was a time where the NBA was not, in the 70s in particular, it was pretty dark and not necessarily a foregone conclusion it would become the juggernaut that it is today. So some of that's luck, some of that's skillful management, but frankly, some of that is the competitive juices inspired by this ragtag yet occasionally amazing ABA. So arguably that's something that you should be not only proud of, but that's part of the tapestry of basketball history that you were a pretty decent part of. And that's got to give you some level of satisfaction to your career playing wise, even though it wasn't that long.
Well, it was, the first All-Star game that was played right after the merger. I think probably 8 of the guys on the All-Star team were ABA guys. So there were more ABA guys on the All-Star team versus NBA guys that were on the All-Star team. It was just, frankly, it was just David Stern and his administration's view on the ABA and the war that was going on that kept it separated like that. Now, from a business standpoint, where David Stern was, it made sense. It was competition, and that's the way that he viewed it. So, that was from his vocal point, but from our standpoint, ABA guys, I mean, we felt we were just as good as the NBA guys, and proved it in a number of different situations. So, talent-wise, the only difference in the NBA was that the NBA had better big men. They had better centers, better power forwards than was in the ABA. But when you talk in terms of guards and small forwards and et cetera, and people who could score, could shoot from outside, they was much better in the ABA. I mean, Louis Dampier and Daryl Carrier, I'd put them up against. They would go down in the Steph Curry era as far as shooting. Louis Dampier and Daryl could shoot them at half court. Free throws, he was high 90s. Rick Barry, obviously when he was there. So it was just a matter of the way the business model was set up in the NBA against the ABA, which was ragtag. Just a very few teams that had the financial muscle to survive.
Are you still a fan? Do you follow the game?
Oh, I love the game. Still love the game.
And future. Think it's going to be great? You think it's getting too commercial, too much money?
No, I think that back in the day, Tim, the ownership, the agents, they made the money, and today, and it wasn't, the players weren't making that much money, and the focal point wasn't on them, and it was the ownership. But now the players have realized their market value, and these TV contracts and other marketing deals, shoe company deals, and so forth. And now it's the players are making the money. Now, as long as that is as long as the collective bargaining agreement between the league and the players association is handled in perspective, I think the game will be all right. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending upon where you sit, Today, the international players are coming in and taking over the NBA. Now, if the game goes worldwide, then that may balance out from a business standpoint. But right now, this last draft, the top three players, or top three out of the top five, were international players, and the top NBA, the top United States player from college just happened to be the sixth man or seventh man from the University of Kentucky. So what does that say? We're now guys in high school or out of high school from these developmental leagues in Atlanta and some of the other cities are getting drafted before the college players. And now, if you're in college longer than 2 years, then you're getting drafted. You're way down the list. So there's a lot of different dynamics that are happening in the overall business model of the game today. So I'm sure it's in good hands of those folks that are making the decision and evaluating where we go in the future. But the game itself on its own is it still is great, and the kind of money they're making lets you know these TV contracts and what they're paying to the NBA to get them on TV. And the game is going to be there for a while.
All right, our many, many thanks to George for that wonderful conversation. And more wonderfulness awaits you on a number of different fronts from George. Let's start with the book, shall we? It is called Catch as Catch Can, Building a Legacy by Finding Opportunity in Every Obstacle. It is a very inspirational story. It is an easy and accessible read. You will enjoy it, and highly encourage you to pick up a copy for yourself. You will be inspired by it, and you'll get a little basketball history in the process. And you can find it, of course, wherever good books are found. It is published by, is it Advantage Press? I believe it's called Advantage Press, and Advantage Books. Okay, close enough. And of course, you can find it off of our website at goodseatsstillavailable.com. All you got to do is search up this episode with George. That's numbered 361. That's the episode number. And you can, be whisked away to Amazon, where you can conveniently get a couple of copies of the book for yourself, either in paperback form or in Kindle version. It's also available as an audiobook. And we'll get a couple of referral shekels of love when you do it that way. We appreciate that. You can also go to George's website directly and order a copy from there as well. It's Tinsley Speaks, Tinsley, TinsleySpeaks.com. You can follow George on YouTube at Tinsley Speaks. He's also out there on Facebook and on LinkedIn. And yeah, just get yourself some more of that George Tinsley experience, why don't you? We'll be glad you did, as they say. Also available for speaking engagements and whatnot for your various organizations. People need a good kick in the butt, a little optimism for their challenges ahead. George is about as good as they come in that regard. While you're online or tooling around on socials, why don't you follow us, for God's sakes? Again, our website is goodseatsstillavailable.com. You can go to and find all of our previous episodes there, including this one. We stream them all there. We put some nice little pictures up there. We've got a great merch section. You could buy us a cup of coffee, proverbially. You can order some merch from our great friends at oldschoolshirts.com or royalretros.com, or our lengthy offerings from our various vendors within the realm of TeePublic. All of those are available on the merch section page of our website, goodseatsstillavailable.com. On our socials, you can follow us there too. On the Twitter X thing, you'll find us at Good Seats Still, and just about everywhere else at Good Seats Still Available. You can also send us email. We're at hello@goodseatsstillavailable.com. You can watch or listen to these episodes on YouTube as well. We are there for your convenience too. And the best way, of course, is to just simply subscribe or follow us wherever you get podcasts. And we appreciate that, and telling your friends and giving us 5-star ratings where you can as well. Thanks again for listening. Our thanks, of course, as always, to Jerry Payne for his audio excellence. and his knob twiddling this week. And thanks again, to you, kind listener, for listening this week. More fun and frivolity coming to you next week. Until then, take care of yourselves. Bye.